Welcome to Leader You by Black River Performance Management, where we believe work should fuel the human spirit, not drain it. In this leadership podcast, we will dive into the lived experiences of people flourishing in today's workplace and beyond. Join us to hear real-life examples of experiences from our own lives and from the leaders we know and trust. Hello, and thank you for joining us on the Leader You podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Sarah Draper. She is the founder of Leading Well Strategies LLC, a well-being coaching and training business for leaders. Sarah knows that healthy organizational cultures start with healthy leaders, and her purpose is to help leaders be well, to lead well, and to create space for all to thrive. Sarah is a retired FBI supervisory special agent, having spent 20 years in the FBI serving in Oregon, Virginia, and Idaho. Prior to the FBI, she was an officer in the Army Military Police Corps for 8 years and served in Germany, South Korea, and Washington, and led units on deployments in Croatia and Kosovo. Sarah has a BS in Environmental Science from the U.S. Military Academy and an MA in Organizational Leadership from Gonzaga University. Go Zags. She has certifications as a positive psychology practitioner, a resilience practitioner, a health well-being coach, a lifestyle medicine coach, a yoga instructor, and an executive certificate in business communications. Her final FBI assignment was an instructor at the FBI National Academy, a residential education program for law enforcement executives from around the world. As a University of Virginia adjunct, Sarah taught graduate and undergraduate courses in leadership and wellness, allowing her to share her passions for human performance, leadership, mindfulness, positive psychology, and well-being. She's married with 2 teenage daughters, and her family lives in Boise, Idaho, where they love to do all things outdoors: bike, ski, camp, hike, run, and cheer the kids on from the sidelines in their sports. Thank you for joining me and for being on the podcast today, Sarah. I'm really excited to have a conversation with you.
Thanks, Angie. I love to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so incredible reading your bio because there's so many things that I believe that we cross on and we are aligned on. Yeah. And it's super exciting to see you in this new part of your journey after retiring from the FBI. And we met at the Women in Leadership Conference in Boise, and we were both speakers there.
Yes.
And I just really kind of was drawn to you right away when we got to have the speakers luncheon or drinks and dinner. And I really felt like we connected on a really good level, and getting to know you a little bit more in a conversation has really helped me to kind of see one of the reasons why we kind of jived, I think, is because we're so similar in our behavioral style and also in our driving forces. And so that was interesting to learn. But even reading your bio, there's just so many things that, I think we could have some amazing conversations. But what we're here today to talk about is one of the leadership competencies is continuous learning. And that showed up as one of your top skill is that you are a continuous learner. And we define continuous learning as taking initiative to regularly learn new concepts, technologies, or methods. And so thank you for coming. I really want to glean some information and wisdom from you on how you become such a continuous learner, what that means to you, how you got down this path. But first, let's start off with your story, because I bet you didn't grow up and think you'd be doing this. And so, how did your journey start? And of course, you've lived around the world. So just kind of give us the 411 on your story.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. Well, thanks for that awesome introduction. I was laughing as you're going through it, because the only thing I shake my head at, I guess, at that introduction, that bio, and that I haven't yet come to terms with is the fact that my kids are teenagers. Life goes so fast. So to start with, how in the world did I get here doing this? I grew up. I grew up in a family, not a military family, and my dad had served in the Navy after high school, but long before I'd been born. But after traveling this country with my parents growing up, I felt a call to service, and I loved our country. And I kind of thought it would be a nice way to combine those two things through a military service. So I ended up at the military academy, and loved served in the Army afterwards, and really, really enjoyed that for a lot of reasons, largely the people part, right? And that's truly my heart and soul is people, and has been for a very, very, probably my entire life. After that, I was married to a guy I met in the Army, and he ended up in the FBI. And so I ended up in the FBI too. And really, just because that's how to keep the careers aligned, the Army and the FBI, the time didn't work together. We've worked since 20 years have passed, more than 20 years have passed. We work a lot better together now. But at the time, our assignments weren't, we were supposed to be on different continents, essentially. So I came in the FBI and continue to follow that path of serving people and serving a greater mission. How I am now here in Idaho, the first trip to Idaho a number of years ago, we first moved here about 10 years ago and fell in love with it. We came here sight unseen, and it just ended up being the perfect place to raise our family. And we love the outdoors, and we just so much to this state and these communities here. And we left to finish up our careers back doing our ideal jobs, and we made our kids a deal that if they still wanted to come back to Boise once we could retire from the FBI, that we would find our way back here. So we have found our way back here.
Nice.
And in doing that, I just created this business, Leading Well Strategies, to bring my purpose for helping others, specifically leaders, be their best so they can lead their best and change cultures. And I founded that just a few months back this summer, and I'm getting this thing started. I really believe that we can make positive change through our organizations, and we need to empower people with the skills to do that, but also the appreciation of the need to take care of themselves.
Oh, that is so good. So good. I'm so excited to talk more about this because it just gets me fueled. Speaking of which, our motto and our belief is that work should fuel the human spirit, not drain it. So how does what we're doing align with your work?
Oh my gosh, completely. Like, work should fuel the human spirit, not drain it. This is so beautiful. I was reflecting on that a little bit yesterday, because that fueling part is in that terminology, right? There's so much proactivity to that and so much intention to that. And that's how we have to be with our organizations and our cultures. And I focus in on leaders because, for two reasons. Like, being a leader is tough. And oftentimes our leaders are our best doers, or they're really good at the job. And we don't, in some organizations, we don't spend a lot of time developing them. And so those challenges and burdens of leadership can really long-term impact someone in a way that can impact impact their quality of life, impact their health, and so many things. And so I focus on leaders because I care about leaders and as humans, as people, and want to be able to provide people tools and strategies and practices, and introduce them to mindsets about taking care of themselves, for themselves and for those they lead and for those they love. And so that part of work should fuel the human spirit. Healthy leaders help create healthy cultures. And we often see this in the reverse when you have an unhealthy influence, right? That's your not drain it part of your motto. We can see that impact. But what can we do to empower, and inform leaders to be able to create those climates in which everyone can thrive? And that's where the space I love to work in.
Yeah, that's awesome. We're definitely about creating environments for human flourishing. So that's what I see. We're super aligned on that. So, well, let's get to it. Let's start talking about continuous learning. It was your top scores as far as your leadership competencies, and one of your top driving forces is that you're a high intellectual, which means you want to be in a learning position, continuously learning and growing, or you probably won't stay in a role for very long.
Yes, comma. We also saw that diplomacy is pretty high, so I'm also a huge people pleaser. So I have found myself in roles where I'm not learning as much as I want to, but I will stay because I want to make sure everyone around me is happy as well.
Yeah.
But like left to my own devices, yes, learning is absolutely essential. I've been doing it formally as an older adult. I started grad school, gosh, now 7-ish years ago, a little bit later than many, but it was the time I needed it and I was ready for it. And that was that formal learning stage, and that has just opened so many new areas to me to dig into. And I love that you used the word flourishing earlier, because that's that is positive psychology in a nutshell. I use thrive in my motto because it's shorter spelling, but yeah, flourishing. It's like, how do we flourish? And I have very much spent a lot of time now studying positive psychology and bringing positive psychology practices through my work to others to really get to the point where how do we live our best life? How do we flourish? How do we not just be okay? How do we be great? And that part of learning is just learning the science of say positive psychology, but then that practice of learning how to help introduce others to it and help provide different ways for people to find growth within themselves, recognizing we're all very different. And that's also, I think, is a super fun challenge, is learning how to best help others with a diverse skill set.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I found in my, I don't know, I've been in higher ed, I've taught in higher ed and worked in healthcare and worked with leaders and been an executive coach and all these things. And I've really found it's really quick. You can really find out really quickly if somebody's interested in learning, or if they've got this learn it all mindset or know it all mindset, or growth mindset, fixed mindset. But I can really tell pretty quickly if somebody is curious and they really want to learn and to know. And that is the people that I really want to work with. And I suspect you're at that place too, where you're trying to find the people that want to learn and grow and who don't think they have it all figured out.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's who I serve. And so I'm now doing this privately. So I guess I get the luxury of being here for people who are ready for that. And it's pretty cool when someone comes with that curiosity, that desire to grow and learn and change. And I am so grateful that over these last couple of decades, we've the scientific community, and I guess all of us as a whole have realized and accepted, like, we can learn all throughout our lives and we're not fixed. I mean, this is the basis of Carol Dweck's, I think, her initial work, Dr. Dweck. But like, we could continue to learn and grow, and how important that is to do, right? And so it's fun, it's valuable for our long-term health, certainly in our relationships, but it is what drives me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to know that. Don't you? I mean, at what point did you kind of figure out that it really drives you, that you need to continuously learn and grow, to be stimulated? Some people might think they're burned out, and there's actually a thing called bore out. And it is, yeah, like Adam Grant's new book, Hidden Potential, really talks about bore out, and the difference between burnout and bore out. And I've found myself in roles where I wasn't burnout, I was bored of not learning and not growing.
Yeah, I agree completely. And thankfully, the professions I've been in, there's been a lot of variety of challenges, to say the least. But I have worked towards those places in which, and I don't even think it was intentional. It's just kind of what I've gravitated towards, those roles in which I've been able to learn. I even look back at my FBI career, and we have the benefit of getting very, very deep. If you want to focus in on an area as an agent, especially agent, for the course of your career, you can get very deep in that area. I found that every few years I was ready for something else. And so it wasn't just a little change. It was like switching from criminal investigations to counterterrorism investigations, and then switching over to counterintelligence and bringing cyber in. and big, like we have major investigative chunks in the Bureau. And so going and seeking out a way to launch into completely new, a new area of focus. I wasn't even really intentionally, I wasn't thinking about learning. I just thought like once I've got something I feel okay about it, I'm ready for a new challenge. And I love also bringing something from one place into that new role. And it's because we can learn in that capacity too. So a investigative technique or strategy that might work in one area, whether geographic or investigative field, and then bringing it to a different one and trying it in this other field and helping other people learn that strategy too, I found very rewarding.
Yeah, that's really great. I love that. I found myself too, it was about 3 to 4 years, right when you gain the competency and the confidence for the role, then it's just like, okay, like I'm ready for a new challenge. And the great thing about working in the operating room in surgery was that I could do that too. Like there's a lot of specialties. You can work in OB-GYN, you can work in ortho, you can work in plastics, a variety of different things where you can learn, but not every organization is like that, right? Or maybe they're in an office job or they're a leader and they don't have any development opportunities. Those are the things that I think we need to really look at as it relates to retaining our employees, right?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I've had folks, friends, peers, folks I've supervised before that are high in this drive to learn as well, that if opportunities aren't, they're going to find the opportunities. Someone who's high in this drive is going to find those opportunities, I think. But if they're not accessible to them, or if we're creating or not even creating, but we've got to be able to help break down some barriers at time to get them access to those opportunities. Otherwise, that I've seen it, like that drive will continue to pull someone towards something else. And so as a leader, that's very important to recognize. If you've got someone who wants more, it doesn't mean that what you're doing isn't important and valuable to them. But maybe you can see if they want something to help complement that, some additional areas that they can flourish in, and support them in those capacities in addition to their work. Be carefully not to overburden them, of course, but they're gonna be drawn to it anyhow. And so I've had a couple of times where I've been very deliberate about helping to facilitate those opportunities that they've already found.
Absolutely. That's great. So can you tell me some stumbling blocks that you've come along the way as it relates to maybe not getting the learning opportunities or not taking the learning opportunities that you wish you had? Like how has regret maybe been a good teacher, or just any experiences that you want to share?
Yeah, I don't know if I've had any, honestly, stumbling blocks from not being able to seek out learning opportunities, but I do recognize in some professions, such as the one I came from, because I moved around in these chunks every few years, I constantly was starting over. So I was constantly at the beginning or the bottom. And so like I never went high in the organization. That was a choice I made. Had I stayed in one single one of those paths, I probably could have I know I could have. I probably would have had I wanted to, but because I kept starting over, that's fine. That was a choice I made, but I also recognize, like, at least I felt it myself, like I was always having to reprove myself. So beginning in a new area with new colleagues, starting back from kind of the beginning in that specific focus area, I would say that would be something. I wouldn't change it now, hindsight being 2020, because of the growth that gave me. But I do know going through those at the time, it can be very, very frustrating, because people just, you're just the new one. And even though you're senior, you're still new in that area. And so it takes a great deal of humility and a great deal of openness, sometimes to reverse mentorship to the folks who are more, again, air quotes, junior to you, to help them teach you and educate you and partner with you on things.
Yeah, that's a great point. Also, I noticed like you've moved around a lot, and that's a whole start over too. Like I've lived outside the country as well, and what I do and with my children, and I know that when you move to another community and another land and another language and another culture, you are starting from scratch and you make fast friends and you have you so not just in the work but in where you're living and how you're navigating that. So how did that shape you?
That is also a great question. All the way back to my Army time, it was baked into the Army experience. And so everyone's moving and transitioning all the time, and people get very good at it. Everyone's used to it. It's very much integrated into that culture, but also the systems and processes that support the organization. And so you come in, you have a cohort of people who arrived around the same time as you. That's your group, those are your people. And that's who you go through those few years with and that experience. And then you go on different places. And some of my closest friends ever are in far-flung corners of the world, but we get together. It's like no time has passed because of that shared experience. And that's pretty amazing. In the Bureau, not as much with the movement. You can stay in one place, but many people do move, because if you want different opportunities, unless you've started in Washington, D.C. or New York or Los Angeles, you're generally going to need to move for additional opportunities. And those are just because those are some of our biggest locations with the most personnel. And so you're going to need to move. Yeah, it is because not everyone moves. It is sometimes a little bit challenging to connect. But I think internally there's that recognition of the job. Now, in a community, that can be a little bit challenging as well. So I don't know, our trick was always a great dog.
Great dog. Just bring a dog. Some countries have to
the
quarantine.
dog.
Sometimes they have to quarantine. Sometimes they don't, right?
Yeah, our dog was always like the people were like, oh, you're Rainey's parents. And we're like, oh, they're not really his parents. He's a dog. But yes, we're Rainey's people, and awesome. So nice to meet you.
That's so awesome. I love
But
that.
it takes effort. All joking aside, it takes absolute effort to develop, create roots within a community.
I think it takes courage too. There's not a lot of people willing to uproot and leave their hometown or where they've been raised, their comfort, and to move across the world and take their kids, their dogs, whatever, and be open to being the outsider, to learning new languages, learning how to ride a subway, that is a huge learning opportunity that I didn't know would teach me so much until I did it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's, as you're saying that, I'm realizing that's probably why I love different cultures. And I think I have appreciation for diversity and humanity, but I also think there's that additional challenge there, that learning challenge. And yeah, I think that's probably a big part of it.
I just got goosebumps because I feel that too. Like I can't get enough travel. I got wanderlust. Like when I moved to China, I lived in Shanghai for almost 3 years, and and then traveling all over that side of the world while I was over there in those 3 years. But I really learned so much about myself. I even learned a lot about U.S. culture looking outside in.
Yeah. Yeah.
More than I could learn living in the culture. Like when you're in the weeds, it's hard to see it. But when you come out, you see things from a different perspective. And so,
Yes.
and your vision never goes back. Like once you've seen these different perspectives, it's like you've zoomed out instead of just being constantly close up.
Yeah. Yeah. I tried that with my kids this summer. I took them, this is my big retirement gift to myself and the big 50 birthday and all that.
Yeah.
So saved up for a long time, and I took them on a 3-week trip in Europe this summer. And that was and we just, went cheap trains and cheap hotels. And well, cheap is all relative. The hostel that we stayed at in Switzerland was more expensive than any hotel I would ever stay at in the States. It's all relative. However, the kids, I was hoping that and my husband was a part of the, planning on this, and we chose it to be a mommy-daughter trip, and hoping to plant that seed for them, for that future love of exploration and appreciation and confidence and courage, like you said.
That's so cool. Well, I think it does. It comes out generationally to your love and learning of curiosity. I'm seeing that play out in my daughter now. Well, both of my kids as well. One of my daughter actually is now working for Alaska Airlines, and she's traveling all around. And mom gets free flights now. So,
Wow, nice.
so I can't wait to explore a little bit. With her, but I recognize that need for learning and continuous growth is something that's contagious.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I think it is contagious. And I'm realizing again, as we're talking, it's not just the book learning, it's life learning.
Yeah.
So much broader than just an intellectual, if you will, capacity or cognitive capacity in our traditional academic sense. It's just life learning, and travel is a big part of that.
It
Or
is.
it is for me.
It is for me too. It's like that Mark Twain quote. I can't remember exactly, but it's the one thing that will keep you from bigotry and everything else, like, is to just not stay in your own corner of the world for the whole life. Like, get out and at least see the world and get to know people and learn about different cultures and learn about different values and how we differ and be okay with all those differences.
Be okay with it. Yep, be okay with it.
Yeah.
And that takes a great deal of confidence and understanding where you're starting from, but also openness and again, humility.
Absolutely. Intellectual humility, as well as just being humble about, we all have more areas to learn and to grow.
Yes.
What I really learned, and I went into grad school a lot later in life too. Well, just later in life in general, just because of my upbringing. But one thing I learned is that even like when I take a photography class, or let's say photography or fly fishing, for example, my husband's a big fly fisherman. As soon as you get into something, you're like, this is cool, this is awesome. I like photography, or I like fly fishing. And next thing you know, there's a whole world that you didn't even know existed when you start to take a course on it, right? Like you get your toe wet, and then all of a sudden you're like, what? There's apertures and f-stops and ISO and framing and rule of thirds, and like there's once you learn how much you don't know. And then it's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with like anything you learn. You just learn how much you don't know. And then that brings on humility. It's just like, whoa, I think I'm good at photography. And then I take an intro to photography class and learn, I don't know the first thing about it, but I like it, right? And it's fun. And I have an eye, but I don't know why until you get really into the weeds with that stuff. But I really find the more I know, more I learn, the more I know I don't know.
I agree completely. Yes, yes. And that can be fun. It can be, certainly eye-opening, but hopefully if you're approaching it with that perspective taking of just appreciation for the different geniuses and the different intelligences that people have, all the better. I laugh because I say I ski. I love skiing. My husband and kids are really good downhill skiers. I am there with them on the groom trail while they're doing whatever, and we'll meet at the bottom. And people on the East Coast, when I talk about, they go, oh, you ski, I'm like, well, it's relative, right? Like, I love it. Am I at this point really afraid of taking a big tumble and breaking a collarbone or something worse? Yes.
Yeah.
But I see these people out there and I'm like, oh my gosh. So sometimes we can even become hesitant to say we love something because we recognize there's so many different levels beyond us of greatness out there. And I hope people don't ever take that as a lesson from learning, just because you're not all the way at the advanced expert level, it's still important to you, and keep pursuing it at whatever pace you're driven to.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I love that. And staying curious about it and being willing to be a beginner at anything,
Mhm.
right? I think that's part of
Yeah,
it. Just
yeah. That
being with
beginner's mind is a big thing people talking about, just approaching learning from a beginner's mindset.
and being okay with failing and falling.
Yeah.
Just don't fall fast.
Don't get hurt.
Just don't fall when you're going fast.
Yeah, I know.
Well, let's apply that to leadership. So think about people being a leader and thinking, I love leading my team. But I bet you anybody that's listening to this, they didn't, when they got into leadership, they thought it was going to be a lot different than what it actually is, right?
Mhm.
Maybe
Yeah.
they got promoted because they're good at their job, and that's a lot of tasks, and that's a lot of things that they do. And maybe they had nothing to do with leading people or understanding people, right? And then all of a sudden, there's so much to learn and so many things to take into account, and we're all complicated, right? And relationships are complicated. And so they have emotions and they have drives and they have behaviors and they have, morals and like all of these values and purpose and so many things. We're so diverse.
Mhm.
And so it's a thing that we can't just wing. It's another skill that takes courses. It takes understanding like what actually works, learning from other leaders, learning what works with human behavior, what works with human performance improvement, what we know, what the science actually says about
Yeah.
what motivation says. Does carrots and sticks work? No, it doesn't long term. We know that. We know there are some things we know. And
Mhm.
so I think that's what is helpful is when we can bring tools and frameworks and experience and wisdom to the table and share those with the people that we're working with, or share it out on a podcast like this, because there are some people that are self-starters that are listening to this because they're just trying to glean wisdom. They're trying to learn from people who will be vulnerable enough to share how they learned the hard way. That's
Right.
one of the ways I learn best.
I agree completely. And as you're talking about leadership, I mean, that was the start of my last 7-year journey into really being intentional and deliberate about my learning and growth. And it started because I was back in a leadership role, and what had worked for me previously wasn't as effective in a new environment. And I was like, well, hey, I need to get better at this, and I'm going to go to grad school. Right? That's what started that process.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to grad school to learn this, but and it took me a while, like trying different things on. I loved it. My grad degree was in the organizational leadership, and I had great exposure to different leadership practices and theories and behaviors. And ultimately, I came to that conclusion that yeah, it's not something we're born with. It's something we need to work on and develop and train. I settled on the idea of authenticity is being myself, is when I'm most pure, when I'm most true to myself, is when I lead in the best way, being the most effective way, but focusing on connection with others, because that's something that I value greatly. But also there's a situational component to it, and depending upon many factors, like where someone is in their career, where someone is in their expertise in a field. And remember me, like 15 plus years in the beer, I'm switching major chunks. I might have been in the organization a while, but I'm brand new learning something else. And different people need different things at different stages. Different people need different levels of recognition or appreciation or engagement. And so as a new leader, or as an experienced leader who's still a student of the art of leadership and the science of leadership, it's really valuable to continue to connect with what is out there, to help you lead best in whatever circumstance you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought up the situational piece. That's one of the other tools that we use is situational leadership.
Mhm.
It can because you're right. Not even where the person is, but where they are on the tasks in their job. Some of us are really good at certain tasks in our job, but we might need help in different tasks. And the time we come on when we're new, we need a little bit more hand-holding than we do a couple months into the, a few months into the job, or when we're senior in the job. So giving leaders the tools to understand how to lead their teams, when to lead them, when they need more coaching, when they need more directing, when they need more support, or when they can just kind of fly, right? And taking that down to the tasks and not just the person, because that one person that's been their senior doesn't mean they're competent in all of the tasks in their job. So yeah, all of these things are things to think about and ways to get, to learn about, and some really amazing frameworks that work around the world and have helped people to become really amazing leaders. But most people that are in in leadership roles that are effective are learning about being a leader and what that means,
Yes. And once I realized that, I became a better follower. Like I was like, man, I got to give my leaders a break, because when you get into it and you realize how layered and complicated, rewarding at times, tough it can be, whatever, all those things. But I'm just like, I've got to be a better follower too. And I've just got to do my best in whatever role I'm in. And I really see this as roles and relationships. So whatever part of that relationship I'm in, or that role in that relationship I'm in, I just wanted, I worked hard to be again, a better follower, a better team member, realizing we can't have this all like pushed onto one person. And that's why I love to support leaders now, because their heart is in it. Like they're working really, really hard, and it's tough. Leadership is tough.
Absolutely. They're often feeling alone, and many of them can't share everything with their team, or they can't share everything with their board. There's certain things that they really need some support with, and emotional support, and also some outside perspective and some tools and just some wisdom. Everybody does better with someone helping and mentoring and giving them the tools that they need to be more, more productive.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so I'm glad that you are, you go down that path, and that you're really there to support leaders in that role. And I love that you are in this authentic space of, I know what that feels like, I know what it's like, and this is what I want to do to help make a difference in their lives. Because as we mentioned earlier, it really does come back to their home lives too. It's not just their work lives. Like, this is their life, and they're putting the majority of their time at work. And you're taking the biggest chunk of their day, right? Like of their free time with their families, where they'd rather be, right? And so we need to make work a place where people are thriving and flourishing, and give them the tools to be successful.
Yes.
And sometimes that looks like coaching. Sometimes it looks like courses. Sometimes it looks like the whole team needs some training. You're specifically wanting to work with the leaders, right? Is in the coaching realm.
Yeah, leaders and leadership
In
teams.
leadership
Just
teams.
because of that impact a leadership team has throughout that organization, or their arm of that organization, for their cultures.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's awesome. We're getting to the point where I want to have you share, what would you tell yourself, your 20-year-old self, if you could tell yourself what you know now?
Oh, so much, right? But in regards to this, I spent a lot of time, like 20, 30, 40-year-old self, right? Like, let's go through the decades. A lot of time trying to prove myself to others, and thinking that in others' approval, I would find my own approval for myself. And perhaps this is a function of working in environments in which I'm like in the minority because of my gender. I don't know. I've just been always very performance oriented, and never quite felt good enough. So long before imposter term was a term people recognize, I had experienced it for a very, very long period of time. And part of me is like, man, I wish I could have been known like it's all going to be okay. But the other piece to that is I do believe, because I've gone through that, like all of our struggles are with looking at them and the beginning and the middle and then afterwards with openness and reflection, we can begin to realize like our struggles make us who we are. And so had I 20-year-old, 30-year-old, 40-year-old been super confident and known everything was good, I don't think I'd be doing what I am now, because I wouldn't have had to learn as I have, and I wouldn't have had to develop these skills and these practices to help bring wholeness to others. So I mean, it's a tough one, right? Like I know because of that, I am where I'm at doing. Honestly, I feel like this is where who I am, my strengths meet this is kind of like, I think, why I'm here, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't think I would have found this had I not had to go through those challenges and struggles. But I do wish I could just reassure that younger me, like, it is going to work out, right? And so that is part of that is actually my leadership mantra, is embracing this space. It's pulled from Viktor Frankl's work, Man's Search for Meaning, but this recognition, like we rarely know how something's going to turn out when we're in the midst of it. And I've learned through a lot of practice, through a lot of reflection, that space to just be okay in the gap of when something happens and when the outcome comes, and just learn to be okay not knowing. And I've even had to recognize, like, there are things I might not ever know, at least here and now on this earth, like why, and I've got to be okay with that. Things that have happened in my life, when I look back, the benefit of hindsight, if you can follow a little thread, a silver thread or a silver lining to something good that came out of it, sometimes has nothing to do with me. Like I've learned that too. Like this challenge for me ended up, because of this really crazy thing I went through, an opportunity for someone else. Really, absolutely. Like, and so through that and a lot of reflection, I've looked back and learned, like, we just don't often have that control. We don't know. Sometimes we won't ever know. But this helps me going forward. And it helps me to know that whatever is in front of me, I've just got to kind of embrace that space and be whole as I can in that process.
Oh, I love that. Welcome to midlife. That's the 50-year-old perspective. I have it too.
Yeah, right.
Recently read Viktor Frankl's A Man's Search for Meaning too, a couple years ago. And what a game changer to have that perspective. That's a must read for our listeners.
Yes, for sure.
Absolutely. But I think really what you're talking about too is just learning to surrender to life as it is, not how you wish it was.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of peace in that. And there's a lot of peace in accepting life as it is, and holding space, like you said, and being okay with increasing your uncertainty tolerance. That is a skill too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not always having to know the answers and the outcomes, and not be so outcome focused, and just be okay, and trust the process, trust the journey, and know, and also come into your own inner strength of what you've already overcome. Think about the things you've already overcome. And that's been a skill that I've really started to tap into, is thinking about everything that I've already overcome and how much more I could do. We tend to think, I couldn't handle this, I couldn't handle that. But these are all just stories too that we're telling ourselves. And the reality is we'd handle anything that was given to us. We don't even know what we're capable of.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I just love that. Uncertainty tolerance. It's a beautiful way of putting that. I think this is a core fundamental of resilience. And,
That's one of the things I feel like I have a PhD in.
Resilience or uncertainty.
No,
Oh,
resilience. It's not something you want to, but looking back, I've learned in life, I think that's the one thing that I have become is super resilient. And resilience doesn't come without the hard things.
no, it doesn't, right? If things are good, I mean, it's not, I don't even know. I don't even think it's not resilience. I don't know what it is. It's just go with the flowness.
Yeah.
But whenever I talk about resilience with everyone, I bring up Dr. Chris Peterson the late Dr. Christopher Peterson out of University of Michigan, and he was one of the founders of positive psychology with Dr. Martin Seligman out of UPenn many years ago. He explained resilience as the ability to struggle well, and that was just that. If I could put a pin on a timeline of my life when it was like, wow, that's it. That is that moment. So anyone who's ever had a 5-minute conversation with me has probably heard me talk about the ability to struggle well, because that is so important to recognize how necessary struggle is to growth, to resilience, to learning. And it's a part of life.
Yes, it is. And so that's the lesson that wraps it up as far as being learning. Part of that is resilience. And what do you learn from everything that comes, every hard lesson that comes? What is the teacher? Even your worst boss that you've ever had, what did they teach you? Your anti-heroes can be your teachers. Your mentors can be your teachers. You can learn from anyone as long as you're willing. And they can teach you what not to do as well as what to do. And so, oh man, I can't wait to see you face to face when I'm in Boise and talk about resilience, talk about our ability to struggle well.
Yes, beautiful. I love it. I love it. Thank you. This is great. Thanks for all of this. What you do. It's awesome to be able to help people find their way to some of these things. Just this openness to all the different things that we each bring to the table and how important they are.
I agree. And I'm just grateful that you took the time to be on the podcast and that you're putting good out into the world. Lord knows there's multiple people that need it. There's plenty of abundance to go around. There's many people that need help and want help, and you're just for them. So how can people find you?
Oh, yeah, my website, leadingwellstrategies.com, or on LinkedIn, Sarah G. Draper. So would love to connect. If nothing else, just have a call about whatever's on your mind, and there's probably some things I can just share with you that might be, food for thought, or be a sounding board for someone, or a mirror if you need it. But yeah, Leading Well Strategies is the name of my website and my company.
Awesome. Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I can't wait to see you in Boise next time I'm over.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Leader You podcast. It's been a pleasure. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and share with others. Have a great day. With love, Ange.
Angela Young's EQ course has been enlightening and eye-opening. I've really enjoyed Angie's unique perspective and her ability to put things in a way that I can use emotional intelligence on the day-to-day. The coursework has been educational and really enjoyable. I find myself looking forward to each coaching call and the coursework as it comes along. It's been very educational without being overwhelming. I've been able to utilize it in the day-to-day workplace as well as in my personal relationships, and I really, really enjoy being able to grow in the emotional intelligence space.